Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday's stream here at Office Hours. I'm Matthew Groves, and we got a lot to get to today. So it's going to be a jam-packed day, full of stuff. Hopefully, we won't get too sidetracked, but that's okay if we do. I want to start out with a quick plug. Hopefully, this won't take very long. C# Advent. I'm officially opening it today for contributors. It hasn't been officially opened yet, but it will be open soon. If I were you, I'd keep an eye on this website here, crosscuttingconcerns.com, for the official announcement and instructions. And just for the records, CS, can't type my own URL, csadvent.christmas. This is where the C# Advent is going to be. You can see some people have already claimed spots because they were in the mailing list, so they get a little bit of early notice. And now you on Twitch are also getting an early notice. So if you want to sign up to be a contributor, just scroll down to one of these spots. It says claim this spot, claim this spot. Pick a day. There's 2 spots every day. Lots of spaces still open, and you can join in the C# Advent if you want to do that. But that's all I want to talk about today. Unless anyone has questions, I'm just going to move on to the next thing. Is test and CI improvements. And this is what I kind of teased today in my tweets and my LinkedIn post. One weird trick to speed up my continuous integration tests. So I'm going to show this if I can. I'm using a GitHub workflow to do integration tests. And what this workflow does is it will instantiate a Couchbase container, because we're running integration tests here. It will compile the whole solution. The whole solution. And it will run all the tests. So unit, integration, functional, it's going to run all of them. And I think that's all it does for now. There might be one or two other things in there. I'm not sure exactly. But one thing I noticed right down here, you can see this right up here, this little message here, kind of spoiler. But I committed this. This was, I don't know, 4 days ago. Yeah, so this was probably Friday. And I committed this delete article endpoint. If you were with me on Friday, we worked through that in the stream and built that. But I noticed that as I kept adding more, I'm going to call them functional tests, that the build time kept getting longer and longer. So it went from, around 4 minutes down here up to 6 to 9 to 10, 11. And I think this was because I kept adding functional tests, which we'll get to what that means in a second. But what I did was I made some changes, and notice now the builds are consistently, ignore this one right here, but the builds are now consistently 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 15 seconds, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, whatever, 2 minutes. And that's even as I keep adding more functional tests to it. So, what did I do? All right, let me just a little pseudocode here for what I was doing before. So I had 3 types of tests: unit tests, integration tests, and functional tests. Okay. For the purposes of this, unit test doesn't matter. Those are super fast, like less than a few seconds. So those don't really matter for the purposes of this improvements. So for integration tests, here's what I did. For each test, I would, let's see, I'm not going to say create database, but creates database stuff, indexes, collections, test data, etc. This is running the migrations, okay? Then I would run the test. Then I would roll back DB stuff, all right? And then I would do it again. And again, and again for each test. So each test starts with a clean slate, completely clean, runs, passes or fails, and then rolls back. No matter what, if it passes or fails, it rolls back the database stuff. Now, why do I do it this way? Well, with integration tests, sometimes I'm concerned, and this has been an issue for systems in the past. I don't think it's an issue for this system, but sometimes I'm concerned that if I'm, creating test data, if I reuse the database, then I'm concerned that that test data is going to affect later tests. So it's a way of kind of isolating state. Now, what I had realized, though, is that as I was building these tests, for the most part, I wrote them in such a way that if there's any test data in there, it would basically be ignored. It would not be a factor. And I'm not running into anything yet that would cause that to happen. So what I changed this to is new state is more like this. Create database stuff, run test. So I had 4, run all 4 tests, then roll back DB stuff. So for integration tests, this is going to speed them up quite a bit because I don't have to now wait for collections to be created, indexes to be created, more on that later, and then all that stuff to be set up, connect to the database, creating cluster objects, actually kind of a expensive compute thing to do. And I would be doing that every single test, then running each test. Now I'm doing that one time. So, it's some overhead, right? There's no getting around that. But then each test can reuse all that database stuff. And so far, and then a rollback at the end. And so far, that's working great. And that sped up the test a lot. Now, if we get a functional, it gets even more wild. So create database stuff again. Also, I'm going to say instantiate web server and services. So that's ASP.NET. This is Couchbase. And then it would run test and then roll back DB stuff. And again, I was doing this every single time. And this is what I really started noticing the CI build time going up, up, up. And I suspect, database stuff has overhead, yes. For the most part, that's pretty quick. There's not a lot of database stuff going on. It's the database connection object and the index that's really taking up the most of the time there. I'm going to add more indexes, so that could be an issue in the future. But instantiating the web server and services, that's really seemed to be increasing the amount of time to get these tests to run. It's not trivial to spin up a web server with ASP.NET, especially when it's configured with a bunch of services and database objects and all that kind of stuff. So again, the one weird trick here is to just do it like so. So instantiate the web server one time. And since the web server is not really storing any state, this is even less of a problem. So it's just the database state I got to worry about. And again, the way I'm running these tests, any test data that I need or test objects that I need already, test documents that I need already in place, I'm doing that within the test itself. I'm not relying on any data being reused between tests. That's how I was writing tests to begin with. So I realized that this is just going to be so much faster. And not only for the build server, the CI, for GitHub, I was kind of worried about timeouts there. But locally, I can run these tests so much faster. I don't, previous streams, you've seen me waiting for these tests to pass, and it just takes a long time. So much faster now. So what I'm going to call this approach is the build the world. Destroy the world. Build the world, destroy the world. So there's 2 options here. You can build the world, run one test, destroy the world, and do that a bunch of times. Or you can build the world, run all tests, and destroy the world. Now, both approaches are perfectly valid, I think. I think the first one, probably need a better name for this because they're both building and destroying the world. But this approach can definitely have some performance issues, as I've shown. So there might be some better ways to approach this. I think test containers is something I tried early on that I struggled with, but that might be a better approach where you can have a test container, you can roll it back to a known state. It might be faster to do that, or some other approach. But I like this approach a lot better, I think. And I'm going to show you in the code how it did. It seems a little hacky to me. There might be a better way to do it, but it's working, so I'm happy with it. But you have to take a mindset of when you write your tests, do not depend on any data already being in there or not being in there. You have to make the test and the test data itself self-contained. Now remember, this only applies to integration functional tests because they're actually touching the database and creating state outside of the program. So let me show you how I did this real quick, and then we'll move on. So one thing I did is I also reorganized my test. You can see this in the, whoops, wrong one. You see this in the GitHub. So I used to have integration and unit. Now what I did was I took all those tests that were using ASP.NET, Web Factory, whatever it's called, and I moved those into functional tests, because to me those seem like they're more functional. They're testing, you know, an HTTP request to the endpoint to the mediator, mediator to the database, and then database back to mediator, mediator back to ASP.NET, ASP.NET back to HTTP response. So all the way in and out of an endpoint. To me, that seems pretty functional. It's testing the whole slice. Integration tests either are testing the handler plus database or just the database, which would be database code plus database. So integration is either handler, data access service, database, or data access database. Those two things that's integrating there. And then unit, of course, does just one individual piece of code, complete isolation, just C#, not database, not web service, anything like that. So if I expand this a little bit, you see integration. So in articles, I've got two different possibilities here, handlers and services. There might be more in the future, but I think that's it. I haven't written any service tests for follows yet. And then users, handlers, and services. Well, if we go to functional articles, it's all controllers. So then what are the controllers that are using there? Just articles controller. I think there might be another one, I'm not sure. And then inside articles controller, every single endpoint in that controller. So this isn't new code, but notice the setup here uses this functional test base. I used to call this web test base or something, but I call it functional test base. So this depends on there being a web app factory. That is a ASP.NET class that allows you to basically create a application in memory to use it for testing purposes. And so this is what it's doing. It's creating a payload. This is the HTTP request, hitting an endpoint, parsing out the response, and then doing the assertions. And so all the functional tests are like this. Okay, so one of the reasons I moved them in different folders is because of this NUnit trick that I'm using. And I got a big note here because this does seem a little weird. This does seem a little hacky. But the purpose of this is with NUnit, if you create a setup fixture class in a namespace, what it will do is NUnit will run this fixture before everything, one time before everything. Well, the one-time setup will run before everything in this namespace. So before anything in functionals run, this run before all tests will run one time. And then after all the tests are run, this one-time teardown will run one time. So every test in this namespace. Okay, I didn't want to have to do any rewriting, or I'm not really sure a better way to do this, but the test base I had before strips way down. All I'm doing is just pulling these values that were set in global functional setup as a static. Yes, it's static, but I think that's probably okay. This is a test itself. We're not worried about testability. And I couldn't think of a better way to do that because they have to be, well, maybe not. I'm not sure. I was worried about if I made this base class and did all that stuff in here, it would run that every single time. So maybe I have to do some noodling around to make sure that that is the case. But anyway, this is very, very clean. No teardown happening here because it all happens one time at the end of all the tests. But this is where all the setup is for, okay, here's the app factory. Here's the cluster, making sure the bucket's ready, getting the migrations going, setting up the auth service. And then after everything's done, run the migrations down, dispose the Couchbase stuff, and clean up the web stuff. So that runs one time. And I did the same thing, ignore that for a second. I did the same thing with integration. So global Couchbase integration setup. So it's still calling it Couchbase because all these integration tests basically depend on Couchbase. So it's the same thing here. I have some different stuff because I'm not using the web service, so I need to set up the dependencies and services manually. I actually simplified my test too, because I'm just go ahead and create all these services here, even if I don't use them in each test. There's no point in not creating these. They're not that expensive to create. So those are all there. So I actually simplified the integration test in the process. So you can see this used to have a lot more code in it in this setup, but now it's just 3 providers and then setting up those dependencies for the handler, and away we go. But I want to show this test in action. There's one more thing I want to show a test to. Don't let me forget live unit testing, something I've been meaning to work on for a while. But I want you to see how much faster these tests run. There will be one fail. Put a pin in that for now. I'm working on it. But these still have to spin up a database and a web server every time. But not every time, but they still have to do those things to set it up the first time. That takes time. But notice how much faster I've gotten through all those functional tests. 74 tests that hit both the website and the database. And they've been run in a few seconds. If there's one integration test fail, unit tests are going to blast through, no problem. Most integration tests ran pretty quickly. So I'm very, very happy with that. But one thing, and this will be on to the next point in my to-do list. This revealed, because I sped things up, which this keeps happening. If I make things go faster, I keep revealing edge cases and race conditions. This is the login request handler test. Now, this test is unique in that, as far as I know, it's the only time in the code so far where a query index is being used. So if we look at handle, this actually calls get user by email. If you remember back, there was a whole stream or two on this topic. I went back and forth on using email and username as the key. Email is not the key. It's a secondary property of the document. So I have to use a SQL query to fetch a user by email. So that's what's going on here. But this needs a index to work. Index is created here in the migration scripts, creating an index called this on whatever scope, on the users collection, on the email field. Very simple index, just one field, email. The problem is, because my tests run so much faster, they actually outrace the index being ready for setup. So when you create an index in Couchbase, probably any other database, it actually takes some time to be created and to actually go through and does its initial indexing of the data, which shouldn't take too long because there's not much data in there, but does take time, and then actually to announce itself as ready. So before, my tests were giving plenty of time for the index to be created. Plenty of time for the index to be created and get ready. It does this asynchronously in Couchbase. Just for the record, it's not a deferred index. It is a create immediately index, but it does take time for it to get ready. And so now they run so fast that the index is not ready yet. It's like, I can't do this. So it does like 10 retries and times out. So this is the importance of dog fooding, because I'm using my other project, NoSQL migration, right here as part of this project. So if we look at NuGet, you'll see I'm using NoSQL Migrator, which, by the way, I have a later version, which I should be using, but I also have an icon and some cool stuff for it, thanks to some graphics, thanks to some open source contributors. So I need to update this one, yes. I also need to update this package to fix a bug. And I think I've already done that. I haven't actually committed this yet. But one thing I just learned about, I got to test this to make sure it works, I'm not 100% on this yet, is I have this verify create index So whenever an index is created, this needs to be changed to bucket. I go through and I use something called poly to make sure that index creation statement runs without timeout. And that's working fine. But the problem is that the index itself is created in the process being created, but it's not yet ready. So then I discovered this new method here called watch indexes. And from my understanding, I haven't tried this yet, but this will just kind of, if you give it a bucket name and a list of indexes, it'll just kind of hang out and watch those indexes until they are ready to go, which is exactly what I need here. And so my hypothesis is once I add this and deploy this and update it in Conduit, that race condition will go away. But here's the thing with dog fooding, is that because I'm using this NoSQL Migrator project day to day, I'm running into, what is this? I just noticed that at the corner of my eye. I'm running into issues like this, edge cases and weird things that would, if I wasn't using this day to day, I wouldn't have noticed. So that's why one test is failing. That's okay. We can live with that for now. But that's where I'm at. So thanks to test CI improvements, I have a faster build, both locally and on GitHub. And I identified a bug, race condition, with my other project. So making progress on all kinds of stuff here. But today, I'm not going to focus on getting NoSQL Migrator working. That I'll do off the stream. But what I want to do today is get on to another feature called unfavored article. Which actually, there's another bug, which I haven't mentioned yet, that might be part of this as well. I might have to talk about this as well. But for now, we can at least get it working and worry about that bug later. All right. Okay, so I've blabbed enough. Let's get on with some coding. We're going to unfavorites. So let's close out tests here. In articles, I've got articles controller. I've got favorite article right here. I need to basically make a mirror of that called unfavored article. Now you might be saying, Matt, why don't you just have one endpoint that handles both? It's a possibility. If we refactor later, somehow I don't think that's going to be the case because I'm going to need to possibly have some different logic in there. So let's clear this out for now. Remove a favorite of the logged in users. Fine. Let's bring, actually, I think I jumped ahead of myself here. Need to bring this into in progress. Look at the spec. So this is a delete endpoint, which makes it even less likely that I could reuse, well, maybe. Not delete post, delete. No, it's HTTP delete. Gosh, all right. And it's just delete, but it's the same exact URL, which that's kind of wild. Okay, unfavored article. We're going to get auth info again because you can't unfavorite something if you're someone, you can't unfavorite someone else's article. Or sorry, someone else's favoriting. Okay, and we'll do unfavorite request. Probably a lot of the stuff will be very similar. But the thing is, does this return anything? It returns the article. Okay, so I still have to do that. So let's go over to, I think the rest of this endpoint works though, which makes me think that it could be refactored to some extent. But again, one of the things that you can look for in refactoring is duplicate code, repeated code, and don't repeat yourself. But I will say it's not like, I wouldn't say 100% of the time if you see repeated code, that means refactor. It often does, not always. So with that caveat, let's get some handler going here. So I've got a favorite article handler. I'm going to just kind of create that in the same file here for now, unfavorite article handler. I request, just do a little copy and paste to save me some typing. We'll do unfavored article request and unfavored article response. Yes. Okay, and I've got over here, nope. We'll do a favorite article request. I'll create one here called unfavorite article request, which will return unfavorite article response, which I don't think it has much, just validation errors. But I'll go ahead and create a copy of it here, unfavorite. And I'm starting to think validation errors might be good for a... Sorry, good for a base class for these responses, but I don't know. We'll get there. Might be a good refactoring later. Okay. Make this async. Alrighty, and articles data service probably needs to be in there as well, just like I did up there with this constructor. Again, just saving some typing. Unfavorite. Yep. Okay, and yes, so once again, article has to exist. That's really what we're checking for here. Yep, okay, and then, whoa, basically just call unfavorite and return unfavorite article response. Now, there is no unfavorite yet on the data access or data service, so time to create that. Slug and what did I call it? User. Where's my favorite at? Favorite. Slug and username. I'm going to move this up here, just so they're side by side. And one thing I'm looking at as I see this is that this could possibly be segregated. You know, splitting out the favorite stuff, splitting out the reads compared to the writes. I don't know what benefit I would get from that right now, but you know, the interface starting to get a little fat. So maybe split it into a couple interfaces. I'm not sure yet. I'm sure there's any benefit to that yet. So I'm just going to keep on going here. All right, now if you remember, the favorite method is pretty long. It's a lot of stuff going on because it is doing a ACID transaction and a number of other things. So again, this might be a good place to maybe consider some refactoring. But let's just go through it. Create favorites document if, well, this shouldn't be slew. It should be slug. Create document if it exists or if it's necessary. Well, this should be async. Well, let's think about that. So if I'm removing a favorite, if there is no favorite to remove, why would I create that document? But also, would it be harmful to do that if there is no favorite there? Let me go back to this handler. So this will return an error if the article doesn't exist, but it does nothing about whether the favorite exists. Would that be an error condition? Or could I just say, okay, unfavorited? I think that's probably a good way to go. So we can just say, if there is no favorites document, then we're already done. So if someone's trying to unfavorite and they've never favorited anything before, all right, then we're fine. So do I have one? I don't think I have one for that already. I have an exists for, yeah, slug, but not for the actual favorites. So does favorite document exist? And this would be username. So you can see down here, I might be able to reuse some of this. Let's make that a wait. Private async task bool, not bool, capital B. Does favorite document exist? username. Okay. And so this code right here is really just checking that exact thing, right? So return. So let's just go through this. So it's getting the doc ID. So it constructs that based on this little helper. Where do I have that? That should be, that's private. That should be down a little deeper, I think. Yeah, so this just kind of constructs that key. So then get the collection. Does that document exist? Return yes or no. So then I can refactor this to say, does favorite doc exist? Equals does favorite document exist? Username. And wait. If it exists, then we're good. I still need a collection though. I don't need to do that until right here. And I still need favorite doc ID, which I don't need until right here. Okay, so a little bit. And of course, if I think I have some tests that are using this, so it should be covered. Oh, that's one I didn't mention. It's like, what are these new blue lines here, Matt? What's going on with that? Okay, let's take another little diversion here. Let's talk about unit testing. So unit testing is fast enough that it can be running continuously for all I care. And one thing that Visual Studio provides, something called live unit testing, which I have turned on. And what live unit testing does is it will keep running every test in your project all the time, and it will put little green check marks here if the test is passing. Not only that, if you go look at, say, a handler here, it will show you the code coverage. And it's passing, right? So this test has some passing tests. These lines of code are covered. This one here is not covered. So this conditional has not been covered by a test. So live unit testing can show you what you've covered, what you haven't covered. With unit tests. Now, one thing I probably could do, but probably would be not a great idea, is keep those integration tests running continuously. Do I have options here to do this? Live unit testing. Yeah, right here. So I've got something called a playlist for live unit testing. And this is me saying which test I want you to run continuously for live unit testing. So I've just identified only the unit tests. Let me zoom in on this here. Only the unit tests. So integration tests, functional tests. I could probably test extensions too. Yeah, let's test those too. Only those tests will be run. So I was going to load the there we go. So those are on too. Those are also unit tests. I just don't put them in unit for some reason. Maybe I should move them. But anyway, so that is going to give me continuous feedback when I'm writing tests, when I'm writing code that's under test. Again, unit tests only. So if we go back to here, this Oracle data service, this has not been covered by any unit tests, and that makes sense. I'm not writing unit tests against data service, at least not yet. Maybe in the future. I'm running integration tests against those. I could run unit tests that would require a lot of mocking potentially, but I could do that. But I haven't done that yet. So I will do that if the need arises. If there's some logic in one of these that don't quite understand what's going on, I might take the time to do that. But anyway, here is, does favorite document exist? And if it doesn't exist, then we're good. Just return. There's nothing to unfavorite. We're already unfavorited. So this will be a weird edge case where someone's, either the UI is junky or someone's decided to go hit the REST endpoints themselves to mess around. And this is just going to test for that use case, or for that, not use case, but situation. Okay. Now, if you remember, the transaction is because there's two places. When you favorite something, it updates a favorites document for each user. It says, here's your list of favorites. It also updates the count of that article. say, here's how many times this article has been favorited. So we need to do the reverse of that here. So we also need a transaction. So just copy the whole darn thing, because there'll only be a few changes, I think. Okay, yeah, I need this stuff here. Okay. So again, this durability level stuff, I covered this in a previous session, previous stream. If you want to know more about that, I'm happy to talk about it. Create the transaction, run the transaction. So inside the transaction, get the favorites key. Check to see if the user has already favorited this article, but if they have not, then bail out, right? So we'll talk about this, maybe this bug in a second here. But favorites doc, so if favorites does not contain the key, roll back, get out of here. We're already done. They've maybe clicked unfavorite a couple times or something like that. I don't know. Okay, then we're going to remove article key, which is a subset of slug. So favorites is going to be remove article key, and then replace the document, and then decrement the favorite count in article. So get the article, and then minus minus, replace the article. Now, more looking at this, it's really three different things. So like this, and this here. Refactoring those to something reusable might be an issue. I mean, I could change this to an integer, plus or minus 1, instead of plus or minus. I'd have to put like an if statement around this probably, an if statement around this. So I don't know, it might be worth revisiting later, but that is the unfavorite. Now, one thing I did that I probably want to do as well is I want to write a integration test for that service specifically. So I wrote these favorite tests here, and I think I want to do the same thing for unfavoriting. So I want to make a duplicate of this, basically. Again, just kind of going on what I've already done. We're going to call this unfavorite tests. All right. So the initial count would be 1 and go down to 0, 74, 73. Let's change the numbers up a little bit. Let's go from, what's today's date? The 12th. Go down to 11. Okay. Unfavoriting works and decreases count. Okay. Let's get the article. We're going to unfavorite. Okay. Assert exists. Let's see. So this is making sure that that favoriting document exists, which it won't in this case, right? I haven't actually created that. But I need to have a favorite in there before I can unfavorite, right? If I'm working on this test. Do I have any? I don't think I have any test helpers for that. Nope. Okay, so how can I do this? Let's see. Create a test helper, I guess. Add favorite in database for this user and the article slug. Another little test helper. It's a happy little test helper. Test helpers under right here. Yes. Call this one favorites helper. This is going to be a static class. Add favorites in database. This is going to be public, not pubic, public. How many times have I done that? I think it's just going to be task, async task. It's not going to return anything. Add favorites in database. add favorite in database. And again, we'll make these optional, but I want username equals null. These will almost always be used, but article slug. Okay. Again, this will almost never happen, but just in case, valid username, and we'll give you some random element. Random. Random.string, I don't know, 8 characters is probably enough. And article slug equals valid article valid slug with another random component. So we have 2 random components in this one. Random.string 8 is fine. And then I need my delimiter for another portion of the slug there. What's happening? Random.string, I'll make that one 10. Missing a quote. Okay. Okay, so then what we'll do now is we'll say collection equals, oh, this needs to be an extension method. This, and this is going to be Conduit favorites collection provider, called this. Equals await, forgot a comma. Oh gosh, what is all this? This dot get collection async needs to be asynchronous. We gotta wait. All right. Yep. Okay. And it's not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna return anything, but I want to make sure the document exists. So it's kind of duplication code, but this is a test helper, so that's fine. Does favorite? No, I don't need to worry about that. I can just do a set. Yep. Yes, right. Collection.set of string with the username thingy, which I'm going to have to duplicate, I think. Not there. Right here. Can this be? Will this be a problem if I call this public static? And then I could reuse it? I don't know. Seems a little hacky, but this would be articles. Just do this. Articles data service dot favorite doc ID of username. Okay, so it's going to create that set or use an existing one, and we can say set dot add slug. This needs to be awaited. Yep, that seemed good. I'm concerned about duplication, but this is a test helper, so I'm not that concerned. All right, so that creates a existing favorite in there. Good, all good. This should be creating a user in the database. I don't know why I was not doing that already. That might be. Wait, do I need to create a user in the database? I don't think so. Okay, so unfavorite. We're going to assert then that that favorite collection does exist, or that favorite document does exist. That's fine. But we want to make sure that it does not contain the article slug article key. And the favorites count is equal to expected count. Okay, I think that's right. Let's just run it and see what happens. And then we'll talk about that bug that was on the screen there. It might be a bug. It might be something I'm doing wrong, but let's see. Transaction failed. Cannot perform. Okay, I think this is the same issue. But it shouldn't be running into it with an unfavorite, though. This is unfavorite? Yeah. If not, favorites contains the key, then rollback. It shouldn't be doing that. It should have the key, right? Let's step through it here. Both of them failed, so we'll just run one of them. I don't care. Okay. There's something in there. Is it a QW, whatever? Yeah. If it doesn't contain. What? Oh. So I'm in my test. My test helper wrong. Yep, okay, so what I'm doing is, in my helper here, I'm putting the actual slug in there, but I want the get article key. Always with that. It makes me, again, consider if I should make like a slug data type or something like that, but not there yet. Okay, favorite tests. Now they should pass. And then I'll talk about this bug because it just showed up again. Okay, pass. All right. Actually, this one's ignored, right? For good reason. Okay, so I need to write that test there, but let's talk about this bug. So right here I've got TXNN134. So this is an actual ticket that I submitted to the Couchbase issue tracker, which anyone can do, actually. And I would encourage you to do if you find a bug. Actually, let's just show that. Why not? I've got a link to it somewhere. Yeah, right here. And I'll show this to you in incognito mode so you can see that this is public. Generally speaking, Couchbase tries to keep stuff public on the issue tracker unless it is either it's got sensitive customer data in it, or it has sensitive upcoming work stuff features that we're building that doesn't go to GitHub or any public repo because we are publicly traded. So we can't be showing, and we've always done this, I think, but we can't be showing like, here's what we're working on, here's what we're going to deliver in 3 months from now. We can't do that because we can't guarantee it'll be delivered. So we keep all that stuff internal. Anyway, probably just good practice anyway. But for the SDKs and related SDK projects, it's all completely true open source, Apache 2. And so unless, again, there's sensitive customer info, all this stuff is public out there. And anyone else can create an account and submit issues if you want to. I would say make sure you submit a good issue. And I think I've done a pretty good job of submitting an issue here. And I'll go through why I think that is. But here's what's happening. I decided to, wrong project. I decided to write a test that says if I try to favorite an article that's already favorited, then it doesn't actually cause any changes to the favorites. We're not favoriting it twice. We're not incrementing the article favorite count twice, that sort of thing. Seems like a reasonable test, right? All I do here is create an article, create a user in memory. Don't need to actually create a real one. Favorite one time. And then the real test is we're going to favorite the same thing again. Do the exact same operation. And then we're just going to assert that, and I got to add more assertions to this once I figure out this bug, but asserting that the count is still just one favorite in there, not multiple. Okay, great, except that when I run this code, I get an exception. And where this happens is right here. And this is kind of where it says, hey, you've already favorited this, let's bail out. And for whatever reason, when I trigger this rollback here, I get an error. And the error is, cannot perform operations after a transaction has been committed or rolled back. But as far as I know, I'm not doing anything after it's been rolled back. And, this is my big Conduit project. I actually created a console project to isolate this, which is one thing I recommend for creating tickets. Here is the minimum reproduction of the issue, right? So I've stripped out a lot of the stuff that is not related to the bug from my code and created this really simple method here. And if I call that method twice in a row, that's when I get the exception. If I take out this part right here, this rollback part, then it works fine, but of course it does the wrong behavior. So that's what I'm waiting for. I don't know what the priority is for this, or hopefully someone will look at this and say, Matt, you're doing it wrong. Do this, do X, Y, and Z instead. That would be my ideal situation, because then I can get this fixed. I don't have to wait on a new release. But potentially this is a bug, then I got to wait on, say, Couchbase Transactions 112. Which is also open source. I could go and build it myself, etc. But you get the idea there. But here is what I think is a good anatomy of a bug ticket. So this might be just a good general piece of knowledge here. Forget the fact that it's Jira. I know there's lots of people have strong opinions about Jira. This is true for any system. Give it a good title, right? So I just put the error message right in the title. If you say something like transaction doesn't work, not a very good title. Because transaction cannot work for a ton of reasons. So be more specific in your title. And this is true for Stack Overflow questions, by the way, as well. Very similar. Make sure the priority is right. I don't really know if mine is the right priority or not. I'm going to kind of assume that this assignee, Richard Pontone, will take care of that and say, this is not major, Matt. We'll set this down to minor, whatever. Make sure I selected bug. It's not an enhancement. It's not a feature. It's a bug. Put on all the correct labels and other metadata, right? So I just have .NET. There might be other ones out there. I wasn't sure. This other stuff, resolution and fixed versions, that's for someone who's working on this bug later. It's not for me. Environment, I put down all kinds of information there that might not be relevant, but I put in anyway, like I'm running on Windows. I didn't put down Windows version and stuff, but Couchbase SDKs are used by people on Windows, Mac, and Linux, all kinds of Linux distros. So just in case it matters, put that on there. The exact version of Couchbase Server that I'm using, I can repro this with Enterprise 7.2. I haven't tried it with Capella, probably the same thing. The actual transactions library and the .NET SDK library, which these are the latest versions of each. And this is the way I create tickets. This is the way I've done it in previous jobs. This is the way I've done it at Couchbase, and I think it's a pretty good system. Definitely, if you see something missing here, let me know. I can make an improvement in the future. But I think what I should start with is a summary, a quick executive summary, like what the actual issue is. Just cut to the punchline. What's the problem? I'm trying to create a set within a transaction. There's more to it than that. Otherwise, I just use a lock, of course. But this is the minimum viable reproduction of a bug. I probably should have said I'm getting an exception. But here's the repro steps. Here's what you need to do to reproduce this when you're going and doing this. And this is really, really helpful for people who are trying to look at this bug and see if they can get it to happen themselves. If they can't make the bug happen themselves, it's going to be much harder for them to fix it. Now, my repro is pretty simple, right? It's install Couchbase Server locally, which I'm sure everyone, all the engineers have that here. Create a transaction test bucket, which is what this program actually refers to as a bucket called transaction text, and then run the actual attached console program. So I attached a code sample, the smallest code sample I could get that reproduces this bug. It's always good to say what you expected to happen and then what actually happened. I expected no exception to be thrown, and I probably should have said the rollback happens or whatever. What actually happened is this exception. Transaction failed. And then I put some more notes. You don't have to put notes all the time, but some more notes that kind of provide other useful context and information for whoever's reading this. So if I remove this part, then the code works without exception. But then, of course, I'm left with foo in the array, which I don't want. I just want foo. I also attached log output. Now, this can be very, very useful in some situations for developers who are working on this to say, well, I don't know all the details what happened behind the scenes, but if you give me the logs, then I can look through them and see, well, here's where I went wrong. And it takes a little bit extra time to do this, right? I have to actually install nlog and set up a logger factory and pass in logging to my cluster options, and that creates some files. I have to set up nlog configuration for that. It takes a little extra time. Of course, I've done it just once, and I can always reuse that shell in the future when creating other bugs. But those logs will help developers, help people working on this issue to figure out what's going on. It's more context. So I've given as much information as I know into this ticket, and hopefully that'll be enough to address it, to say either, yes, this is a bug, we'll fix it in a future version, if it's a priority, or no, it's not a bug, you're doing it wrong, Matt, here's what you should do instead. So that's my little tirade on creating bugs. It's just because I've seen so many bugs over the years that were just so poorly created. You know, GitHub issues, you see it all the time. An email, someone says, hey, transaction doesn't work. Okay, need more information than that, okay? Because we wouldn't have shipped it if it didn't work completely, hopefully. So need more details about why it's not working, what did you expect, what's actually happening, and then we can address the issue. So I'm not claiming to be the world's best bug writer, but I think I am at least, at least in the 70th percentile, let's say, of bug writers. So that is a bug here when I'm trying to favorite the same thing twice. It's going to be an issue here as well when I try to unfavorite the same thing twice, because both involve this little if and then rollback. And that seems to be the issue causing problems, is doing this rollback before maybe this code, or I don't know. I've tried different iterations of this, and I've tried restructuring this so that it's literally the last thing that runs inside this Lambda. That didn't help. So I don't know. I got hopefully someone on the SDK team can take a look and figure that out. So again, that is going to be, it's not going to pass, so I'm just going to leave it as to do for now. Because this one is already not passing. You see I've got ignored on it. It's a little ignore message. Temporary, hopefully. But there is the favoriting or the unfavoriting. Okay. Now let's look at these two methods. Can I refactor those? So this part here, I think that's used in two places. So I could potentially make that its own method. But the problem is that it itself returns a response. So it'll really just be refactoring these two lines. So I'm not that worried about it. I think it's okay. Alrighty. I could create a test for this at functional level, which I've not created a favorited one. So let's go ahead and create a unfavorite test. Why not? Okay. And this is going to inherit from functional test base. All right. Let's do a little bit of copy and paste type of situation here. And I'm doing this because this probably be in the base class, but not everything needs a user. But in this case, it needs to be authenticated, right? Do I have authentication? Authorization, yeah. I do have that. What's your problem here? Oh, it's the wrong user class. Not the Couchbase one, the Conduit one. Yeah, there's a user class in Couchbase as well, because there's a concept of users in Couchbase. So. All right. So all this setup does is we're getting the web application itself, as I covered earlier, setting up an authorized user, because this is an authorized endpoint, and then just putting that token into the header. So then we continue with the actual test. Unfavoriting article with valid, let's say valid unfavoriting article. How's that? Of article. So in this case, it's happy path. So I want to arrange, act, assert. The act is going to be very similar to this situation here. I'm going to copy all of it. Don't need it all just yet. Don't need this stuff. But it's not a post. It's going to be delete async. And it's going to be this. Slug, which I haven't created yet because I need an article. Wait. So I need the article set up, I don't know, services. Why not? Okay. So the article collection, what is it? Equals web app factory dot services dot, oh no, I've got service already up there. Service dot get required service conduit articles collection provider, because I need an article in the database. Okay, put that out there. Article collection provider dot create article in database. I don't care any information about what's in the actual article. Just need it to be created. And article.slug. Need a request. So the payload equals just a slug. So yeah, so I don't, wait a second. No, there is no payload. It's just that. So none of this stuff. That's cancellation token anyway. Delete doesn't have a payload. Okay. Good. And then I need to assert that basically it's going to return the article view, but for now let's just say response.status code is equal to status code. Okay. I need to set up favoriting as well, because we're unfavoring this. Yep. So I need a favorite. Favorite collection provider. So I'm going to reuse that test helper. Conduit. Favorite collection provider. Favorites collection provider dot add favorite in database. Username, don't really care. And then article slug, which is article.slug. Yep. And we just say username equals a valid user. And we'll put a random component, because I'm always nervous about this kind of stuff. Random. Do I not have random in here? It's not exactly a service, but we'll put it there. Okay. Yep, that's all good. Okay. So as far as I know, it's going to create an article, and I'm going to create a favorite in the database already. Oh, okay, and let's just see if that works. It's going to take a little longer than unit test because it's got to spin up the web server or the website and the database connection. It's not happy with me. Internal server error. What is the problem? Internal server error. Let's try debug. Let's see if I can get more information about that error. Something that ASP.NET doesn't like, I think, is what's going on there. Stack trace, maybe? That'd be helpful. Ignore that. I expect it was okay. So internal server errors are always a problem because it makes me think that my request is bad. API article slug favorites. Slug favorite. Looks like a legit slug. And that's a legit URL. API article slug favorite. API article slug favorite. But it's not even going to hit. Oh, it does go in there. Oh, okay. Good. So it is my code that's causing a problem. So get those claims. Favorite. Yep. Does this actually check to see if the unfavorite article handler? Okay, article exists. Slug, username. So it's down here that's causing the problem? Favorites doesn't exist. That's not right. It should exist. So, but that shouldn't, it's not causing a exception. Slug, username, get article request. Oh, probably right here. This is where it actually checks to see if the user exists. Maybe. Or it just assumes the user exists. So I need to set that up in the database as well. Is that what you're telling me? Get article handler? Yeah. Okay. No problem. Just need another user here. Create user in database. Take this out and just use user.username, like so. Okay. But I want it to be favoriting. That's one troubling part. Let's go. Let's see what happens here. So this should pass, but I'm worried that it's not testing everything I want to test. Still internal server error. What am I not handling? Unfavorite tests. Debug. Okay. Yep. Everything there is going fine. Don't need this. Back to here, please. Okay. Username is some string, yep, okay. So that's still the part that's failing. Is the get article request. Well, that's a problem. Article request. No. Get article handler. What is failing here? I think that is what I need to figure out. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. All right. Does the article exist? Yes. Okay. Build up the response view, get the profile. Oh. Yeah. There's no author for either. So I need an author as well, because this one does not create an author to go with him. So, but in a real application, it wouldn't ever. That would never be the case. This is just a test data situation. Okay. My test helpers aren't creating the full graph. They're just creating one in isolation, one entity in isolation. Okay, so that's passing. But I am concerned that it's not finding, as I step through it there, right here. That favorites should exist. Because let's double check here. Favorite username, favorite doc ID. Okay. In my unfavorite tests, I'm adding favorite in database. I'm using doc ID from username and adding the article key from the slug to that. Let me just make sure this is actually hitting here, I guess. Yeah, I can look at the database too, see what's in there. All right. I keep pumping my microphone. All right. So I've got this user. That's the user right there. So if I go into the favorites collection, there should not be one. There's not. Okay. But let me look at this again, actually. Favorite doc ID should be username : favorites. Not that it needs to be, but these favorites seem to be random characters and not : username. All right, let's keep going. So that should be doing that. What does this actually return? Okay. What's this collection it's using? Favorites, yeah. Okay. So if I look at immediate window, that should now be created. But it's not. It's set collection. So what is article slug get article key? It's not using that, is it? What? How is that? That doesn't make any sense. It's using this as the key? Am I doing this wrong? Collection, doc ID. Then why is this add async using this for the document key? That doesn't make any darn sense. It looks like it's putting the article in the favorites, which doesn't make sense either. Maybe I got these mixed up. Username, article, slug. Username, article, slug. Yep. Username, article, slug. Collection for favorites should be going on username. What in tarnation? What am I missing here? Should be returning a string. Should be adding a string to the actual set, which has this as the key. But none of those documents. Oh wait, am I in the wrong bucket? No. Oh, wait, there we go. Okay, it was just showing the wrong thing on the... Okay. That's weird. Okay, so it's... There we go. We're seeing the right thing. Okay. Let's try this again. All right. Debug. Alrighty, so username is so then this will be : favorites. Doesn't exist yet. Okay. Now it should. Okay, it does, and it uses the slug FVO. Yeah, so I'm going to show you this on the screen here. Here's the favorites document containing just the one article slug right now, that's how it should work. Okay. And then if I go into articles, data service, I'll go into the unfavorite. Okay. Does this exist? It's using a different key. That's the right one there. It's using a different username. Okay. So I'm doing something wrong with my test. Adding a favorite. Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't need this. Ah, gosh. I need the user that's logged in. Okay. This should still pass. But now I feel more confident that I'm running the right test. Okay. Good. So now I need to get a commit ready. I need to move these into their own files. Okay. Those are all good there. I think those are good there. I'm nagging feeling that I forgot one file, but I'll check that on commit. Okay, let's do a commit. See what we got. Alrighty. I did change this test name. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. This is something I should have done a while ago. Class name to change file name to class to match class name. So ignore that. What am I actually committing is my feature here. So favorite tests. This is of the data service itself, right? Yes. This is the actual endpoint I added. Here's the unfavorite. I did some reorganizing there, but there's the unfavorite method, which is still plagued with the same bug. And then I added these new files. Okay, I think we're good. 23. Unfavorite endpoint. And tests. Okay, get that going out there on CI server. I'm going to make some notes in that issue, though. Okay. My note is, where does it say? Yeah, right here. Leave myself a note over in this. Feature is done, but there is a potential bug with transaction library. This also affects favoriting, not just unfavoriting. Just a little note to myself. All right, done. At least as far as I can today. I'm still blocked. Maybe I create an issue just so I don't forget. What do you think? I think so. Convert this to an issue for real world. Okay, there is a potential bug affecting both favorite and unfavorite. That's it. So don't forget, it's in there, in the backlog. Okay, I need to add some docs now to the endpoints article controller. Not be too big of a deal. Where is my real world endpoint spec? This is the unfavorite article. Just copy that link there. Conduit spec for unfavorite article. Okay, article slug, article with profile of author. Oh, I didn't write a test for that. I think it's probably fine. Article was unable to be unfavorited. Successful unfavorite. Returns the unfavorited article. Unauthorized. That's all the same. Let's go ahead and run this in a browser. It does not happy with that. What happened? Something not compile? What did I do? Is something else running, taking up my port number or something? Let's close this one just to make sure. Okay. What is wrong with ASP.NET today? I'm not even getting any errors. Just exited. Let's do a rebuild. Just for fun. See what happens. What is the problem? Is it this endpoint causing issues? See what happens. Nope. Is it something in the comments? Nope. What is wrong with you, ASP.NET? Is it this other Visual Studio that's open? Let me close that. I don't think that's the issue. Well, that's not good. Let's see. Is everything being built? Should I run all the tests locally? No, that seems to be passing just fine. 2 minutes, 30 seconds. Weird. I'm going to run all the tests anyway. Again, I should expect one failing test here. Although, shouldn't it be ignored? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's ignoring that ignore attribute. Also, shouldn't it? Oh no, this is nothing to do. Okay, it is ignoring the one, but there's another one that's failing because of that race condition I talked about earlier. It should be one of these tests that's failing. Or it might not fail because, again, it's a race condition. Yep, there we go. Everything's passing. What is ASP.NET? Why is ASP.NET not behaving? I'm going to try a Visual Studio complete shutdown here. Don't know what that's all about. How are we doing? Up next is starting to list articles. So that's a big one, I think, anyway. You know, I've been building it up in my mind anyway. Maybe it's not that big a deal, but pretty big functionality. A pretty important piece of functionality as well. I don't see why Visual Studio restart would affect anything, but it's worth a shot. What I would expect is some dependency issue with my configuration services, but usually I get a different error message for that. I'm not getting any error messages. Same thing over here. I don't think I've shown it to you yet. Just exited with code 0. What in the world? Yeah, it's all the same warnings and stuff I've gotten before. Well, this is a problem. Oh, I know what it is. I think I know what it is. Yeah, I was messing around with something, and Tess was on a startup project, so it was working just fine. This wasn't doing anything. Okay, here we go. Alrighty, there is the favorite and unfavorite. Okay, all the documentation is there. Looks good to me. I'm not going to go through it right now because I'm sure it's fine. Because I'm pretty confident with my functional test. The endpoint is fine. Let's get going. So I'm going to commit that Wait, what is this? Oh yeah, this is the documentation. I need to commit that, which is 23. What docs? Don't need to push that out just yet. All right, well, it is time for a big one. Move this over here. List articles. So lots of functionality here. So this is a get endpoint. It's returning the most recent articles globally, so every author's articles by default. You can provide tag, author, or favorited query parameter to filter the results. So for instance, if you want to filter by tag, you put in question tag equals, I guess, a single tag, right? Filter by author, you provide the author's username. You can filter favorited by user. Who favorited this? It's probably mostly my own I want to check, but specify there. The limit. So you're not going to show literally, not return literally every article, right? So only one page at a time. Default here is 20. Probably need to put a, let me make some notes here. Probably needs to put a reasonable limit on limit max size, like maybe 100. How many articles do you really want to view at a time, right? And then offset would be skipping the next page. So it's standard paging stuff there. Authentication is optional. It's going to return multiple articles ordered by most recent first. So in this case, one of the tricky parts is going to be, it has to bring in the author information, including following, including favorited, if I am authenticated. So I'm going to make a little comment there. So in that case, there's a couple different approaches you could take for this. It might be worthwhile benchmarking those to see if there's a major performance difference in those two methods. So I think I might start by doing a benchmark. So let me write down these two methods. So two possible methods. One approach would be pure SQL. Can you see down there? Pure SQL. SQL query to return article info, author info, favorites, and what's the other one? Following info. Okay. Second approach is a SQL++ to get article IDs that match criteria. IDs only, then use IDs to get slugs only, I guess. Article keys only, right? Article keys only, then fetch article info plus author plus favorites plus following. With existing data services. So those are the two approaches. I kind of want to use number two because I feel like it's going to be easier to write that. Let me zoom in on this. I didn't spell favorites right. I kind of want to use number two because that means I have to write a pretty simple SQL query with some optional filters, limit and offset, and so on. But I'm just returning the article slugs. And then I'm leaving all the stuff with getting the author, the favorites, and the following, getting that all with the data services. One other thing I need to consider, another factor to consider, caching. Cache results into their own documents. So to improve performance and reduce strain on query service. Is that worth it? Oh, no. Not part of the Conduit spec, but certainly something to consider, as that might be better performance And it might be, just as far as a teaching tool, it might be a good thing to say, hey, here's what Couchbase can do. It can also act as a cache itself, but it can do some complex operational queries. But you might want to cache those results if those don't change very much. And we're talking about a list of articles. How often do those change? The Twitter, or X, used to anyway, have this concept of fire hose, giving you pure list of every tweet that would be published. If this website were something like that, or something like Medium, where there are literally hundreds of articles being posted maybe every second, potentially I could issue a query to this that does not filter by author, does not filter by user, does not filter by tag, and just gives me the pure list of all articles. It doesn't, ordered by most recent first. So the most recent 10 articles, 20 articles, or whatever. If I cache that, potentially that's going to update quite a lot. And so caching it would actually, it really just kind of slow down the user trying to make that request over and over and over. If they keep refreshing the home page, for instance, is what I'm thinking about, seeing new articles come in. And this is probably why, if you go to Medium, you go to medium.com, it's not a raw list of the most recent articles. It's more like a list of highlighted articles, popular articles, whatever. That doesn't change very often. I don't know if Medium has something like a fire hose where I can just show me every single article. My most recent first. But this is the Conduit spec, and that's what it wants. So, again, I don't know if I would necessarily want that if I was creating a Medium website. That seems like it could be a huge strain on resources. That's why I think maybe rate limiting this or caching it. Rate limit might be a good thing to explore, actually. But, even rate limit can only go so far if we're rate limiting it by user. Potentially still have millions of users, which means millions of requests, every rate limit period, which means millions of SQL queries, which, again, is possible with Couchbase. We have done it with customers, but that takes a lot of infrastructure to do that. So what I don't want to happen is, I want this to be, as a teaching tool, reasonably useful and work without being too complex. But I also don't want to set people up for failure, to where it's like, wow, this is how you do it. This is how you do a fire hose on your site's homepage. Because you probably shouldn't do a fire hose, unless you know what you're getting into there. So I might not do the caching. There might be a separate ticket. And there's some ways we can use some built-in caching capabilities of ASP.NET to pull that off, which Couchbase has a provider for, distributed cache. Okay, but I think what I want to do is I want to investigate this. I want to benchmark those things. I want to see, because they both involve looking at multiple pieces of data. There's no getting around that. Well, again, I guess could cache that stuff too in the document, like denormalize. That's an option. I've not designed it that way, but it's an option. Where it's like, but the problem with that is you still have to look up the following and favorites. So it would be, if I cache the author info in the article, it would be just one lookup saved. So yeah, it's a possibility. All right, let's do some benchmarking, I guess. I'm going to create a new benchmark class here. I remember how to do this. Where's my program here? Yeah. So I'll just create a class right here. This is list. List pure SQL versus SQL plus KV. Should call it that, I guess. Okay. And remember how this works. Got a global setup in the benchmark here. So benchmark is really a kind of like a unit test, a little bit. You're not getting a true and false, though. You're getting some stats. Let's do a public async pure SQL. No, public async task. It's not destructor. Pure SQL. And do another one. Public async task. Not per SQL. SQL plus KV. I'm going to have to use some existing stuff for that. I can write the pure SQL query here directly, but I'm going to have to use the article stuff I've already built, which is no problem. We're going to add Conduit Web as a reference to the benchmark project. That should work, right? Okay. I've not done benchmarks on the stream, though, before, have I? So here on this, I don't want to run that benchmark. I want to run this one. Okay. This won't actually do anything yet. So it'd be pretty lame benchmark. But let's just see what happens if I run that. I'm going to have, let's see, running benchmarks. Do that from the console? How did I do that before? Hey TBD Gamer, what's going on? How are you? Oh, I gotta build in release mode, that's right. It's gotta be done with release mode. So switch this over to benchmarks and release. Can I do it like this? Control F5. I'm hanging in there, TBD Gamer. Running into some bugs and stuff like that, but we're good. I thought I'd kick off this next issue with doing some benchmarks to figure out what's the best way to approach two options that I'm considering. Maybe you can place a bet on which one you think is going to be faster. So the idea is list articles. So this is an endpoint that lists all the articles in the whole system with optional filters by tag, author name, favorited, and page size, which has default value. So my concern with this is that this is hitting a SQL query every time, which I might be able to address with caching, but anyway, SQL query every time. So there's two options here. Because we're in Couchbase, we have multiple options when it comes to reading and writing data. One option is a pure SQL++. So I'm going to write a SQL query that's going to get the article info, join to the author, join to favorites, because we need to know if this article has been favorited by whoever's logged in, and following, because we need to know if the author is being followed by whoever's logged in. So those four different things, join those together, and just give a pure SQL output to the endpoint. There we go. The other option, which I have seen this used sometimes with Couchbase customers, is a SQL++ query that applies all those filters, tag, author, and so on. But all it does is get the article IDs, the article keys only. Just the keys. Really simple SQL query, no joins, because I don't need a join to do any filtering. Although I might have to, actually, now I'm thinking about it, because favorited by user might be joined anyway. So I might include one join. But then, once I have those keys, and I've applied the filtering, I then use the key value API, which I've already implemented methods to do this, to look up the full article info, get the author info, get the favorite, yes or no, get the follower, yes or no. Which I already have that in place for individual articles. So the question is that going to be a faster approach? A little more complex, yes, but that might be the more optimal approach to do that. And what I'm trying to do is show in this project like optimal ways of using Couchbase. So it's going to be SQL either way, but it's a question of a large SQL query with lots of fields being returned, or a small one with just one ID being returned and then looking up those values via KV. So I honestly don't know which is going to be more optimal. So it might be time to place your bets. So that's why I'm creating this benchmark here to compare the two. This is all about performance here, because certainly I already know which one's simpler, which one's more complex to write. This is just empty benchmarks doing nothing, so it's nanoseconds. But what I wanted to make sure that worked, and I kind of also want to show, since I've not done it before in the stream, maybe I have, I don't know, the output of benchmark.net. So if I go to my project here, I think it's over in benchmarks, bin, release, maybe. You'd expect the bulk fetch would be the quickest. Which one is the bulk fetch? That's the selecting everything with all the joins, or just the keys? There's a bunch of output here. Selecting everything. You think that'd be the quickest? Okay, interesting. The quickest under load, I guess, would be the question. The other is like a select plus one. Kind of. It's a select, implemented caching. Yes, of course, caching could be on top of either one, right? And Couchbase has a built-in cache, but potentially the list of articles could be different every time. Caching would act as kind of a rate limiting sort of thing. I could make the cache have a TTL or something, so it's going to return the same data for the 30 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever the TTL is. Okay, I got a bunch of benchmark junk in here from before, so clear it out. Run this again. Another option that's kind of halfway, as I was discussing briefly, is denormalizing data. There's one thing you can do with NoSQL. I can store a copy of the author in the article. It could only be partial, because I can't store is following status in the article, because that varies from user to user. So that always has to be calculated. So this is a benchmark of nothing right now. This is literally testing nothing. But I wanted to show it in action as kind of a baseline to show the graphical output and everything of the benchmark. Benchmark.net. So I'm literally benchmarking empty method and empty method. So a lot of nanoseconds here. Not much happening. I don't know why it's taking so long for nanosecond operations. It's benchmark doing whatever benchmark does in between. So almost a 50. Okay, now we do the second one, I guess. Why is it 15? I don't know what's going on here. Okay, well, I was doing the second one. Why is it so slow? It's doing nothing. It's so slow. It must be all kinds of wacky instrumentation and measurements it's taking of my nothing. So, as far as what you're talking about there, TBD Gamer, with caching, so everything in Couchbase is cached. So even if the select query is, the results of that select query are not cached. I could add caching for that. But everything else, every key value lookup is going to be cached. So that's why potentially the second option of fetching all the data via key value could be faster, because there's less SQL involved. Now, if I could put everything in a covering index, that'd be a bit much, I think, but it's a possibility. That would speed things up too, but it's too much for covering index, I think. Okay, so there's the benchmarks, and go back over here. Where are the artifacts? Yeah, so it generates a nice little HTML file that shows the results. So we can see that the pure SQL one was slightly slower, even though they're doing the exact same thing, which is pretty wild. But yeah, there's, we're talking a margin of error, a measurement of 12 nanoseconds here. So they're basically equivalent. Statistically speaking, they're not, but close enough. So that's what I want to do. I want to test those two methods. So this would be SQL query, which might be a lot of work to write. This would be a smaller SQL query plus some lookups. So why don't I try a SQL query, I guess. Let's go ahead and build one here. I'm going to do so in Capella. So do I have any data in here? That I've got one article. I need to do some setup. Add a bunch of articles maybe. So probably need this cluster anyway, right? I don't think I'm connected to Couchbase. Yeah, yes, I am. Okay, let's just do a localhost to start with. Hey, subscription from Aaron. What's up? Didn't you just subscribe last time I streamed? You subscribed again? Thank you for the sub, Aaron. Good to see you. I hope things are going well for you, or getting better at least. Hopefully you can hear out of your ear a little better. Maybe, Aaron, you'll have an interesting opinion on this, since you are a fellow Couchbase employee. Does every month. You can hear again, life is good. That's great. All right, Aaron. Couchbase server or Couchbase Capella. Here's my requirements. List articles. All right. Global list of articles. Optional filters like tag, author, favorite, and then some paging. Okay. Now this is Conduit spec, right? So I think of this as like kind of a Conduit homepage is going to say, hey, give me the latest 20 articles. Maybe I'll filter it by tag, whatever. But latest 20 articles. All right. So my concern here is that if this is a real website, and we're building a real world project here, that's going to put quite a strain on the query service in Couchbase. 1,000 people hitting the homepage at the same time, 1,000 SQL queries. So potentially, it's got to be SQL no matter what, right? There's no way to do this in key value lookup. There might be, but it'd be really complicated. Basically, be building my own query engine. But SQL query is going to happen no matter what. Two options, though. One is full-blown SQL query that does all this. Here's the options right here. That selects the articles, latest articles, joins it with the author info, checks to see if it's favorited by the current user, checks to see if the current user is following that author. All information that it needs to return this endpoint. So pure SQL that gets all that information. The second option is a SQL query that matches the criteria, ordered by latest 20, returns the article keys only. And then once I have those keys, I can then go and do key value lookups of the data to get them directly via, from the cache, via the key value API. Ignore caching for the moment because I could cache the query results, but ignore that for now. Which do you think is the better approach and why? And also show you what's supposed to be returned. This is what's supposed to be returned. So the full article here, that's just from the article document. This is the author needs to be embedded. That's a separate document right now. It's a separate user document. This following needs to be looked up, and this favorite needs to be looked up. You're saying SQL query all day. SQL++ query all day is going to be more performant than my kind of piecemeal solution. Okay. All right. I say let's. I want to benchmark this to prove it out though. Just want to make sure. And I can always switch back options. Okay. Yes. Okay. Simplicity. Yes. SQL query is way simpler. Absolutely. Absolutely. But what about performance? If this is meant to be a medium clone, real world, which one do we take? In this world, add another node to query. Okay. Just keep adding nodes. All right. Maybe then I skip this and just go right to the SQL query. I'm going to write it anyway, so I may as well. You just lump another query node on the pile. Looks like an ad break is happening. So let's go ahead. Let's just try. Just do start writing a query. Can I zoom in on this a little bit? Here we go. From Conduit default. And what I've gotten there is articles. Articles A. Order by. Oh, there's another issue. I've got updated at and created at. Which one does it go by? Most articles. Most recent. So I'm guessing. Is there a coalesce in Couchbase docs.couchbase? Coalesce. If missing or null. Yeah, there we go. I like coalesce better. Order by coalesce, and we're going to a dot updated at, a dot created at, descending, limit 20, offset 0. I need a primary index for that. Okay, I'm not going to use a primary index in production, but I'm going to create one to make it easier for me to create this query, and then from there I will create the index. So don't do this for production. Don't put a primary index in production. Whoever's watching this in the future, don't use me as an excuse why your queries are running so slow, because you're using a primary index. Don't do it. All right, is it done creating yet? Okay, good. Okay. That was pretty darn fast, actually. There's not that much in there, though. 20 docs. Okay. All right, so what I need is, let me look at the requirements here. I keep bringing up the wrong screen. Okay, so I need article. No, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about the wrapping just yet. So I need a dot slug, a dot title. Okay, good. A dot description, a dot body, a dot, is it tags? Oh, body is so big. No, it's tag list. Tag list. A dot created at, a dot updated at. A dot favorited won't be in there. A dot favorites count. Wait, is favorited in there? There should not be a favorite in there. A dot favorited. Okay, that should not be saved to the article. So there's a bug. Do I have that in here? Yeah, this should not be. This is always calculated depending on the user, depending on the logged in user. Don't store. Okay. Let's see. With good indexes on your queries, it shouldn't be that painful. This is the biggest issue. Indexes are the biggest thing that's going to make or break a query service. I agree, Aaron. It's just that the requirements for this make indexing like, probably can't use a covering index for this. Maybe I can. I don't know. So this is just going to be hitting the data servers anyway. TBD Gamer, I'm no database expert, but the number of developers I've interviewed with senior developer roles lately do not know what an index is, but put SQL as one of their core proficiencies has been astounding. It does not astound me at all, TBD Gamer. Yeah, that does not surprise me in the least. I spent much of my career writing lots of SQL and not even knowing that indexing was something that I could do, much less how it works or how to write a good one. So I'm not surprised at all. And so much developer tutorials out there, documentation, guidelines, etc. If they mention indexing at all, it's just kind of brushed aside as, oh yeah, and don't forget to create a good index. That's never addressed, almost never addressed. And I think for two reasons. One is either developers are working on a data set that's small enough that a full table scan doesn't really matter, which is the case for me, or the DBA does it for them and doesn't even maybe consult them, or just maybe tries to explain to them, but it is kind of brushes it off, goes over their head, don't care, which has also been the case for me as well. Yes, you've had to, okay, yeah. So if you had to actually tackle this issue in production databases, yeah, you got to learn pretty quickly. And I am not a database indexing expert at all. I probably could not create an index, a good index, on my own volition. But fortunately, there are some tools that help get me at least most of the way there, if not all the way there, in terms of creating indexes, like Index Advisor, Index Explain plans that kind of show, like, here's where your query is suffering the most, you should index here, that sort of thing. Yes, so I didn't actually have to tackle indexes in SQL Server probably until my last job, in fact, which was eight plus years ago at this point, because we had a very complex domain and we had customers' very large amount of data. So indexing was a huge thing. But yeah, it's SQL Index Advisor, or in our case, Couchbase Index Advisor, to the rescue for me. So that's where I'm planning to go, and maybe consult ChatGPT along the way. But okay, let's go back to writing a query. All right, so favorite counts should not be in there. Favorite account should. That's kind of a denormalization. So this gives me all the article information. Look at this, a table. It's going to be ugly, but there you go. Really, the whole body doesn't make any sense in this API either. It is ridiculous. This is again not in the Conduit spec, but here's the example they show. Here's the body. It takes a Jacobian. Maybe if this was Twitter or something, but this is Medium, right? This is going to be long form text. And you don't need to show the entire, well, maybe you do, I don't know. You don't need to show the entire long form text to the homepage. No, it's not base64, Aaron. It's just random data. It's just random test data, random string of a certain length. That's all that is. It looks encoded, but no, it's just random letters and numbers. Just my tests have created this over time. But what I would think, what should be here is like a subset of the body, like the first 50 words or something. But anyway, all right. So that's all I need for the article. But also, we'll just put this in a nice little more readable format here that kind of matches the requirements. Slug, title, description, body, tag list, created at, updated at favorites count. Okay, so now I need the author. So I'm going to do a join conduit default users u on a dot. Is it author name in there? Author username equals. I think it's just the key, right? Meta ID. And then I can go ahead and say user dot bio, user dot meta dot ID as username. Let's put that first. U dot image, and then following is also calculated. So is that going to work? Syntax error. What did I do? Conduit default. What? Oh, missed the period there. Okay, so there we go. Where's my username? Yep, okay. But I'll probably do this in SQL. This should be embedded. So how do I embed that in SQL++? Do I go like this? I don't remember. Is it as simple as that? No, that's not it. Let's see. Data projection, maybe? I need a projection to a new, like, nested object. Nested projection. I don't know. Let's see what this has to say. It's projections. Yada yada yada. Blah 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 blah. There's some syntax to do this. Do you know, Aaron, offhand? I want to wrap this in like a nested object. Another option might be a subquery. Wouldn't that be faster? That's another thing I could potentially benchmark. Okay, nested. Deep traversal of nested documents. Nest statement was not what I'm going for here. Let's see. There is a SQL++ object. Modifying data. I want to modify it, but maybe this will give me a hint. No. There are some. Maybe they're in SQL Server documentation. Reference? No. Learn? Data? Hey, Karagi! First time chatter, Karagi. Welcome, how are you? Writing some SQL right now. Trying to figure out a way to wrap a nested object. And I know that there is a language reference somewhere, but why can't I find it? Data, SQL++. Oh, here's projection. Just got your DO account suspended for some reason. What is a DO account? DO? Not familiar with that. Services. Well, maybe it's in a query service. DigitalOcean account. Oh, that's a bummer. What were you doing on DigitalOcean? Deploying some websites, I assume? Is this for your personal stuff, hopefully? Not your employers or something? Ah, thanks, Sarah. Saving me the trouble here. Yes, okay. Here we go. This is what I want. Comments. Yeah. Conventions, maybe? No, let's see. literals, strings, but I want is personal account, testing out your own websites, etc. Well, that's a bummer. I'm sorry about that. I'm not saying this is what happened, but sometimes I get, I'm not going to mention what it is, but I got flagged. My account got flagged. And it was probably some automated service that flagged it. I suspect it's because of my heavy use of VPNs around here. But they never told me a reason why I was suspended. So I emailed them. I said, hey, I'm suspended. When am I going to get unsuspended? And they're like, oh, you're going to be unsuspended in next week or something. But they still didn't tell me why. Like, how am I going to avoid this in the future if you don't tell me why I was flagged or suspended or whatever? Okay. Object. I think maybe object functions. What I'm looking for. What am I looking for here, Aaron? Nested operators. No. I want to project it. Like, how do I create a literal object? Is this what I'm looking for? Yeah, but there's no object here. It's time to talk to ChatGPT. What am I trying to do again? So, blah, 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 blah. Where's my screen? Oh, okay, not that one, apparently. Over here. So I've selected all these fields. I've joined article to author or to users, and I'm selecting these fields from the author, but I want them to be wrapped in an object like so. Author, and then those fields, and then close object. I want it to be a nested object, those specific fields. I guess maybe I could do a nest, right? That might work. But I'm kind of curious the syntax anyway. Let's see. Yes, what? Use nest. Can I select individual items with nest? All right, so nest, and like just you, something like that. So, okay. Oh, okay. And then I could do you as author, right? So there's the author right there, right there. That's at the top, I guess. Okay. But I don't want password and password salt being returned. I just want, or email. I just want bio and image and username. So how do I select those specifically? Look at the nest clause here. Nest predicate. Okay. Nest route R. Yep. Look up nest clause, index. So that's a bummer, Karagi, that they didn't tell you what you violated. And Linode suspended you on sign up. So let me ask you this then. Are you someone who uses a lot of VPNs? Do you use a VPN service? Because that's what I suspect, is that I'm oftentimes connected to a VPN that's like in different states here and there, different countries even. I'm not going to go into why I do that, but it's perfectly legitimate reasons. And so I suspect that if I'm using this certain tool while connected to different VPNs, that it's going to be like flagged. Like, this guy's all over the world. He's doing something fishy. You're not using VPNs. Okay, you only subscribe to VPN. Okay, well, there goes that theory. Suspended on sign up. Maybe it's an email address? Like, do you have like a weird email address? Like, you put, sometimes if you do something like I do this, where it's like my name plus, Linode at gmail.com, something like that. I put a little plus in there. Sometimes that can be flagged as fishy. Again, totally legitimate, but they might flag that. I'm not seeing a way to be discriminant about nests here, Aaron. Am I missing something? Which might not be end of the world, but I don't want to return password salt. I don't want to even risk those being returned to my endpoint. Nope, it's my primary email, no plus. All right, I'm out of ideas, Carrigy. You're on some list somewhere. You're on a list of watch out for this person. There's like a sign with your picture, like do not sell hosting to this person. That's all I can think of, but I don't know why. You did use those on some sus places, yeah. I know people who have the discipline to use those every time they sign up for something. So if I sign up for Hulu, I'd say mgroves plus Hulu. Sign up for Netflix, mgroves plus Netflix. And they do this so that if their email address ends up on some mailing list, they know exactly who the culprit is. I'm not sure what you do with that information at that point. You're going to go after Hulu in a lawsuit? I don't know. But still, people do that. How do I use Nest to get certain things? Is it something like this, where I can say u.bio? Will that work? Didn't look like it. As author? I would have thought that would have worked. Seems to be pretty... That seems to be intuitive to me. Well, if that's going to work, then I only need the nest. Okay, well, let's just do it that way. I don't know. Maybe there's a better way to do it with nest. I don't know. But this seems to work, so I'm going to keep on going that way. Okay, so I need bio. I need username. Meta u.id. That's what the username is. Bio and u.image. And the following is also calculated. So there we go. I'm halfway there. All right. So favorited. I need to join. This might be tricky. Conduit default favorites. I'll call this one fave. And so what favorite documents are is each document corresponds to the username. This might not be a join, actually. Let me think about this. Let's start out as a subquery. As favorited. So I want to select star. Start with star from conduit default favorites fave where we'll say on keys and it's going to equal some username being passed into this, right? So mgroves, something like that. Syntax error. Oh, because you can't do select star, right? Oh, yeah. I don't want select star. I just want select. I'm going to select true for now. Still doesn't like it. On keys. Is it an array? Double string? What's the on keys? On key syntax for server. Or is it on key? Select on keys. Oh, hey, I saw it. On key expression. Show me an example of this. On keys. Airline, yeah. It's just going to be a literal, right? Or doesn't it like that? Where's what I'm missing here? Well, I guess I can run this query on its own. And debug. What are you doing here? Workbench. Okay. What is the problem with the syntax here? Near line 3. On is reserved word. Oh. Where? No? Where on keys? Oh, gosh. Yeah, the on is for joining. I don't know why I'm putting on in there. Where is the keys here? There's a way you can select by keys, so I don't have to bring in meta to the query. I wish I knew what this stuff was called. Make it much easier for me to look it up. I just know it's the on key syntax. It's the key syntax. Where clause? Where clause? Show me some examples. Select by key. Would be nice. Map reduce? No, definitely don't want to do that. Advise, risk assessment, yada yada. Well, let's go back to this. Gosh, use keys. Gosh. Aaron, why don't I know this? Use keys. Okay, there we go. There isn't one in the Groves, but let's go back. Okay, use keys, not user keys. Okay. All right. So then favorite, I don't want it to be an array, though. I want it to be raw. Still array. Why is it still an array? I want it to be true or false. Maybe this is the wrong way to do this. Maybe I can't be a subquery. Because it needs to be true or false. And select is always going to return an array, right? So that's not going to work. No problem. Do a join after all. Join conduits. Left join conduits, because it might not be in there. Default. Favorites, fave on. And again, it's going to be passed in, but we could say meta fave id equals auth. Oh, no, it's the key structure for that is username : favorites. Okay, and that's going to return, that document itself has an array in it. So then I could say I gotta create that document so I know what the heck I'm working with here. Favorites. So they all look like this, right? So I'm going to create a new document. Call it mgroves favorites. Foo and bar. These are all the article slugs that I have favorited. Okay. So now it's going to return something so I can actually see what I'm dealing with. Okay, so it's an array. Fine, but I don't want it to return an array. I want this to examine that array to see if it contains the slug of the article. So that's probably an array, a function, right? Of which array contains, perhaps. That would work. So array contains Expression is the array to be searched. Yep. And what I'm looking for is a dot, not slug though. Now I got to parse that slug here in SQL. There's another issue with doing this. Is there an array, or is there like a split? Yes. So, isn't this like a way to do this with let? I don't know where that exists at, but let article key equal split of a dot slug. Nope, a dot slug. With that, and I want it to be the first one. Can I just go like this? Oh, no, I want it to be the second part. Is that the right place for that, or for let? Where's let supposed to go? Not let. Let is supposed to go right after the from. Okay. Doesn't like it still. Oh, maybe okay. Maybe it needs to be after all the... Yeah, there we go. Okay. Article key. Okay, so then this one says... Okay, this needs to be as favorited. Okay, so it's false. Good. Because this article key is not... this slug is not in there. Let's go ahead and add it. Go back to this. Back to documents. Am I in the right place? Here we go. Favorites. What? What? What's happening? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. This one. Favorites. And I have the M Groves one, right? Those aren't favorites. What in the world? Those aren't favorites. M Groves, favorites. Hey, Aaron, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for your help. Appreciate it. There it is. Okay. So I want to add this slug to it, please. There we go. So now it should appear as true when I execute it. What is that one? What is going on? Where's my query at? What happened to my query? I just wrote a whole big query. It's gone now? Oh, wait. Maybe I need to go to this one? Different history? Oh, this makes me unhappy. This makes me very unhappy. I lost my query. Unset. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. This is samples I did like weeks ago. But it's not showing the latest one in here? Wait, no, was I writing it here? Was I writing it? Yeah, I was writing it here. Crying out loud. Gosh. All right. Doing it again. Select. Of all the times to find a bug. I don't even know how to repro that. That's the problem. Conduits, default, articles. A. Fortunately, it's not that complicated. Okay, and I want to order by coalesce a dot updated at. All right, enjoy your meetings, TBD Gamer. Thanks for stopping in. Created at descending. Okay, that works. All right. A dot slug, a dot title, a dot description, a dot body, not void, body, a dot tag list, a dot created at, a dot updated at. Favorited, I haven't, gotta go back and finish that. A dot favorites count. Okay. I'm going to just copy this and make snapshots of it over here in my notepad. Oh, that's obnoxious. You know what I should be doing? Gosh, why don't I think of this? This is what I should be doing. Let me just close this here. Open a folder. Visual Studio Code to the rescue. Okay, and we've got Couchbase plugin. My local Couchbase, connect to cluster, please. Conduit. No, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Articles. I want to do a. How do I do a new query? New workbench. Oh, okay, great. Maybe what I want is writer. Okay, here we go. Hey, Karagi, what's going on? Oh, you're not. You're already here. I already saw you. I thought you were a new chatter. Seems good. All right. Okay, so now I can run this in Visual Studio, and I won't lose it to the web browser weirdness. Okay, I like this better anyway. Awesome. Okay, we're going to join conduit.default .users. I think one difference here is, yeah, I can still see. I can't really see the schema. It's not showing that. I don't have it on the index there. That's fine. Okay. Users, you on. And it is going to join on a dot author. What is in there? Articles. Author username equals the key of the user. First time seeing Notebook for SQL, usually it's for Python. This is a Couchbase extension for Visual Studio Code. But the thing with notebooks is that, yeah, Python's very popular, but there's notebooks for everything. Everything these days. And I like them. And I should have known better because I just did some video content for Couchbase maybe a month back where the whole demo was just me using Visual Studio extension showing off SQL++. So why didn't I go there? I don't know. Just didn't think about it. But there we go. Okay, so favorites count. And I'm going to say as author. The tab even works on this. Meta u dot ID. Oh, I could just pull author username, same thing. U dot bio, u dot image, and then false as following. Object missing name or value, line 15. Oh. Is following a reserved word or something? Just leave it out for now. Okay. Author bio. And this should be as username. Reserved word. Line 12. Why is that a reserved word? That was working before, wasn't it? Let's just try this in the browser just to make sure. I thought this was working before. Didn't like the as. Yeah. I didn't like the as. But wasn't I doing that before? Wasn't that working fine? If I don't put the as, it works. But I don't want this to say ID. I want it to be username. There's another syntax, isn't there? Like, if I don't use as... Is it because of the other as? No. Okay, back to the docs, I think. JSON object in SQL. Something like this, maybe? Paths? Nested path expressions. Maybe that's what I'm doing here. Oh. Like this? No? That's the JSON, but I want the actual SQL to do it. Okay, here we go. What do we got? Subqueries, function, concatenation, construction expressions. Aha! It's a construction expression. Does it got to be in quotes? Yes. Da 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 da. Okay. It's called a construction expression. So if I knew that, it would help me find the documentation a little easier. But how else do you look that up? Oh, the thingy that lets me create nested objects in the thingy. Yeah, construction expression. Okay. And then I could say false as following, or no. Wait. Yeah, it's not going to work, so I say following false. Okay, so that is what the result looks like. Identical to this. I just need to now bring in the favoriting and the favorites counts, which I was doing before I was so rudely interrupted by a problem. So let article key equals split a.slug with this delimiter and give me the second part of it. And we're going to join conduit defaults, oh, forgot the period, defaults favorites fave on. Don't forget the nest. No, I don't need the nest. The nest didn't work for me. Yeah, because I couldn't figure out how to select individual parts from the nest. So I said, forget the nest. Don't need it. Don't want it. Unless I can figure out a way to discriminate, select specific parts of the object being nested. I don't want it. Okay. So this is where I'm going to say on on fave meta fave.id equals, this is going to be passed in, right? Favorites. Is there a concatenate function that I have to use there, or can I just say plus? Oh, it's not plus. It's pipe. Put that in a little parentheses. And I'll left join because it might not exist. Okay, and then favorited, I need to then know this array contains fave. Does it contain the article key? So now it should go from false to true. Okay, great. And now the following. So a very similar thing. Left join conduit default, if I could type, following, seems to be a reserved word, meta fave id equals mgroves, and is it following? What is it? Buckets, again, I only need to go to a different browser. I can just go right here, although it might not be indexable. Yeah, I can't do that from there. That's one thing I can't do, is I can't browse unindexed data from that plugin, but I can do that here. Wrong bucket. Follows. So it's follows. Okay. No syntax error. Is it because of the following? This should be around everything anyway. Wait. It's called follows, not following. No index available for ANSI join term fall, because there's no index on that. But there's no index on favorites either, I don't think. Yeah. So why aren't you happy with, fall. Okay, there we go. And then following is just going to be array contains follow with the author username, meta UID. Currently I'm not following this user, so this should be false. It's not returning anything. Let's go ahead and create a follow. mgroves. Is it follows? Follows. mgroves follows. And the user who I'm wanting to follow is this guy. So there we go. And I'm also going to follow other users who don't exist. So now will this query work? Yes, so now I'm following that, but that's a problem because I want it to say false. Like there's nothing. So why is that not returning anything? Is it because this is like missing? What if I do this? Love it. Okay, so what's happening is, because there's a left join, this is essentially missing or null. I'm not sure which one, but then array contain says, I can't find it, so following doesn't happen. Okay, that looks good to me. That's the query right there. I'm actually returning pretty quickly. Now the problem is that this is the base query. I also need to put a bunch of wheres on it. But for now, I'm going to save this because I'm running out of time. Let's save this as, what's the endpoint? It's data access. I'm going to just create a little folder here. queries. And this is the what this endpoint is called list articles. SQL PP for SQL++. Failed to save. Oh, it's okay. This is a bug I already reported, actually. It has to be a certain extension. Otherwise, this plugin is unhappy. Data access, queries. So this is list articles. Okay, there we go. And let's just look at that real quick, because it is a notebook, right? So if I go into web here, data access, queries, it's a text file. It's a big JSON file. Looks like so, right? So it's got all this syntax. It's kind of ugly to look at. Let's pretty it up. It's not meant to be looked at directly. There's a little tool I like to use a lot that validates and pretties it up for me. So this is the notebook. Really, really simple. Just 2 cells. Or no, 1 cell. It's, of the second kind, whatever that means, I guess. It's the query. SQL++, and then there's the actual query I'm working on, but it's all string encoded to go in JSON. So there you go. I'm on my way. And based on what Aaron says, this might be the most efficient way to go. I definitely need to think about indexes. Right now it's using a primary index, and that's not going to fly. But the next step would be adding all these filters in there. So like tags, for instance. So this will be the wheres. So we could do this. This is an old hack that I used to do back in the day. I think that still works. Yep. Okay. And we could say and tag a.tag list. This could be an array contains. What's in the tag list right now? Cruising. So this would be something that would be added on dynamically if a tag was supplied by the endpoint. So there we go. Yeah, we'll just knock these out maybe. Author. So we only want the author. So this would be a.author name, author username equals, and just going to again just use this name right here, like so. Okay, how many does this return? Just the one. There's only one article by that author, so there we go. Favorited by user. That's a little trickier, right? And of course, I've got the limit 20, offset 0. Those will also be dynamically supplied by, what are they called? Parameterization. So favorited by user is a tricky one, because it's going to be another. So this is M Groves here. Here, why don't we do this? Let current user equal M Groves. That way I can kind of reuse this and give it more meaning. Oh, doesn't like it. I have to do, can't use more than one let. Ambiguous reference. Is that used elsewhere? Okay. Now I need to check out the let syntax, make sure I got it right. Well, let something equal, let something, yeah. Ambiguous reference is current user. Why is that ambiguous? Do I use current user elsewhere? Can I not use let values in joins? Why is it ambiguous reference? Okay. All right, well, whatever. We'll figure that out later. That's not important right now, I guess. Just makes it a little harder for me to write this. Okay. But I need to figure out if there's a favorited. I need a user. This article must be favorited by a particular user. Okay, and so then I can say, should be another left join, I think. This would be another user, like Jake, for instance. And we could say and, so this would be part that would be dynamic as well. That wouldn't normally be in there. There's no sense joining if I'm not even going to check. And we could say, so let's just call this favorite of current and favorite of filter. Where else do I have fave? So this was fave of current. And this might not appear either if the user is not logged in, because authorization is optional. Authentication is optional for this endpoint. So there's definitely a lot of logic that has to go into this as well. But we're just testing the query, make sure that it works first. Fave currents. Do I have fave anywhere else? Yep, fave current here. So this is fave filter, goes here. Okay, and fave filter array contains fave filter. It would also contain some sort of user, like oh no, this contains, sorry, article key. So this is going to return nothing because there is no Jake. Oh, invalid function. Oh, contains. Okay, so because there is no Jake in this case, I made him up. Doesn't exist. But we could see, we could make M Groves. Why didn't that work? Because I should have favorited that one. Okay. All right, well, I still got a lot of work to do, but that's kind of the idea, is that this is the base query. This is with all the bells and whistles in it. These need to be parameterized. This needs to be parameterized or not shown. These need to be omitted or parameterized. And then the query can be executed. But I think the key here is I want to try to see the performance of this versus doing it the other way, like I'm going to call it the hard way, to see if there's any performance difference. And that's what I'm trying to do with this benchmark. So most of the way there, writing this query, it looks pretty good, actually. A lot better than I thought it was going to be. A lot less difficult to read, which is one of the benefits of SQL, I think, is it's very easy to read. It'd be curious to actually, before we go, let's have ChatGPT explain. And don't use any technical terms. Let's see what it has to say. Wow, it's really breaking it down here. We're searching for specific book records. Okay. We want the book's unique identifier, title, description. Okay. Okay, hard coded, so that's a problem. And it's saying books instead of articles. Why is it doing that? It's called articles right there. But this is very good. This is a very good description. Your coworker used ChatGPT for his query and somehow shortened the query time from 6 seconds to 1 second. Okay. Hey, if it works, I would be nervous that it's returning a different set of data. So I would make sure to verify that. But this is a long description of this query. I don't know why it's treating it as books. Don't say books. say articles. Also simplify, let's say compress your explanation into 5 sentences. This is ChatGPT 4, by the way. Subscribe to ChatGPT Plus. I think this is a pretty good explanation. So we're searching for specific articles in our database. We want details about the articles, like title and content, information about the author, only articles with the tag cruising, which I hard-coded in there, written by a specific author, favorited by someone named Jake, are of interest. Written by a specific author. Yes. Yep. Let's show the newest articles first, so that's cool. It interpreted the order by date. Only the first 20. I think it's done an excellent job of breaking down that query. So we're in an ad break right now. Apparently there's a new code editor with GPT integrated called Cursor, built on top of VS Code. I've not heard of Cursor. I've been using Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and ChatGPT, and those seem to be pretty good for my purposes so far. I've tried Bard a little bit in the early days, and I did not find it very impressive. There are some other ones out there that I'd like to get around to trying, but I'm pretty happy with these two right now. Anyway, just about ready to wind down the stream. I'm going to check out my team. I'm part of the Live Coders team here on Twitch. So let's see who's online, see if we want to raid anybody. C# Fritz is online. Tim Bodette. I can't remember who I raided last time. Not very many people on my team online, so let's just do a quick raid of C# Fritz. We're going to wait for the ad break to end before I trigger that raid. But I'm pretty happy with the progress I made so far on this list articles endpoint. It makes me optimistic, assuming that this performance turns out to be okay. It makes me optimistic that it's going to be good. There's still a lot of work to do with this endpoint. I haven't even started coding the endpoint yet. I'm just looking at the query, which I think is the most important part of the endpoint, frankly. It'll have to be well tested, of course, because there's plenty of options that can change this query. But this is the base query, essentially. It might be a good idea to label these for later. Favorites for use with optional filters. This stuff only matters or only for authenticated users. Yep, this needs to be parameterized. He's parameterized, and also usernames need parameterized. And those two, username needs parameterized there. That let is just a convenience variable for use elsewhere, use in select, I guess. Using anywhere else? Yeah. Convenience variable for getting the article key from slug. Okay, the break's over. We're going to head over and raid C# Fritz. Everyone say hi, C# Fritz, and hang out with him for a while. And I will see you next time I'll be streaming is on Friday. Hopefully I have some more updates regarding some of the bugs I talked about today that are kind of external to my code. Not my bugs, I have plenty of them, but there's other bugs going on that are causing some issues. So hopefully I'll have more updates on those later. But in the meantime, hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you over there on C# Fritz's channel. And thank you for watching as the raid timer counts down. I hope you'll join me over there. Here we go.